All right, so we have lots of champions here today, and we have the freshest Euroleague champion also in the house. Please welcome my good friend and we never worked together, but we're basically like colleagues for life already, KOSTAS CHATZICHRISTOS.
So after all this time, I'm glad you say my last name correct. It's a challenge for everyone. I go by Kostas, generally in Europe, because the last name is a disaster.
Your last name? Imagine my last name. The versions I heard.
Yeah, you understand.
I understand. You went to the U.S. system. I went through the U.S. system, and I think in America I probably have the biggest variety of pronunciations of last names.
Yeah, mine starts with a ch. CHATZICHRISTOS. So
Chacho.
Well, that's a good analogy. Not bad.
You just came back from your own summit that you have with the Strength and Conditioning or Euroleague Strength and Conditioning Association.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity to show off our association. We have been active for the last 5 years, and we just had our 5th annual summit. This year it happened in Torino. And it was a 2-day event. We have speakers from all over the world, NBA, and glad to see the community of strength and conditioning coaches growing. In Europe, obviously, we're focused on basketball and trying to shed some light to what we do and learn from each other and try to influence as much as we can from our side of the game, as big as or small it might be, to try to work with the Euroleague and try to work with the basketball world to improve some things for our jobs, but also for the players' benefit. Because eventually we all work for our players and coaches, but mostly the players.
And that's an annual event that you guys do.
We do it every year. We have a couple of online events during the season, but because everybody's working, the majority of the coaches are active coaches, so there cannot be any live events in the winter, but we have one big gathering every summer, end of June. This year happened in Turin. Last 2 years was in Prague. First 2 years was in Athens. We don't know where it's going to be next year, so stay tuned if somebody's interested.
Vilnius.
Yeah, Vilnius is a very, very attractive destination. We'll see.
I wanted to start off with the quote. And it's something that my favorite podcaster, Chris Williamson, from Modern Wisdom, and he has quotes. He uses quotes from other people, but this is very good as a metaphor for also what you guys accomplished this year with Fenerbahce. Everyone is jealous of what you got. Nobody is jealous of how you got it. Can you explain the process that goes into winning a EuroLeague championship and how much really is behind the scenes that everybody sees lifting the trophy and being happy and emotions and crying, how much actually goes into this, and if people are actually willing to sacrifice all that to get to the top of the mountain?
Well, that's a really good question, but it's a very wide question because there's so many things that need to happen in order to be successful, winning or reaching the Final Four. And quite frankly, a lot of teams are doing it. It's just only one is going to be able to actually reap the benefits and be happy at the end of that weekend and raise the trophy. You have to, in a nutshell, if I can go through some characteristics that I've seen in the teams that have won, like CSKA, like now this year Fener, is a culture of winning. Everybody's aligned to, the goal is being set very high right from the start. We're expected to win. So everything must align to these goals, starting from player selection, player attitude, coaching, management needs to be on the same page. And of course, when we come down to our profession, which is supporting the players, making sure that the players are healthy, first of all, which is a major challenge nowadays, and also performing at their best. You need to have a system underneath that works and works every day. Our staff rarely takes a day off because we always have to work with the players and really be consistent. Consistency is the key, is to have the sense of urgency that you have to solve these problems right away when they arise, where maybe it's an injury, maybe it's a player that doesn't play a lot and he needs extra attention, consulting the coach, making sure everything runs in the team You monitor the team as individuals and also as a group. So it's a very complex task. So it needs to be aligned, it needs to be streamlined and be executed consistently, and then maybe at the end to be able to reach that goal. And in my experience, the teams that win are the teams that are able to build momentum the last 3 months, roughly 3 months. Obviously, there's no time, specific date, that you have the players available, you are able to build through the results and through practices, and you go to these playoffs, to the Final Four with confidence. And the confidence is built by the group dynamics of we're winning, we're all together, we're executing, and that building that confidence.
I think what also is undervalued, and I can speak from experience in terms of what I got to experience last year, but there's a lot of losing you have to do to get to the winning. Yeah. And if you win too early, you underappreciate the value of the championship, of how hard it really is, and then you forget about it. I learned to appreciate the medals we won with the national team, the silver medals we won, because at that time you're like, oh, we didn't win gold, but like in essence you really got far to with the Lithuanian national team to get to the final to win the silver medal, and you don't cherish it and value it as much. Then you win a championship with whatever selective team, not necessarily me, but you as a whole, and the losses that you had to go through to understand what it really takes to win the championship, the failures you had to endure along the way. In your case, maybe there was some decisions that had to be made and you would have done them differently later on because of the experience you had prior to winning it. Were there any decisions that you had to adjust along the line, that you made the mistakes beforehand, before winning it all? Because there's also luck involved. There's no question about it.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point, and it's a little bit cliche, but you do learn from your losses. The problem is the management needs to understand this and not fire everybody that's around because there's a loss, or we failed, and then you start over because you lose this experience. And everything that was supposed to be learned after the loss is lost because you have a change of faces and a change of attitudes, and here comes somebody that has a lot of confidence, and rightly so, but you don't learn from the mistakes. And in my experience, of course, all the victories came, and they were sweeter because they came after a lot of pain. And of course, there was major adjustments that were done, or not majors. I take that back. A lot of adjustments that were done in all aspects of the game that led to winning. And I remember, all these feelings of failure, of this sadness that you have after you lose. Then you have to go back and really analyze what happened from our side. How did we train the players? How did we handle one injury? How did we handle this lack of playing? And then next time you're ready. And then, like I said in the previous point, that you have to build up that momentum, that confidence, and that's built with you can build this with just doing the small things every day and the small adjustments every day. Last year we went to the Final Four, and I had this feeling with Fener, and I had the feeling of there's. It's bad to say, but I don't think we're going to win because the collective feeling was, okay, we're happy to be here.
The mood was different.
The mood was different. But this year, everybody was, okay, we saw what it takes. Mm-hmm. We played this semifinal. We were not ready for whatever reason, mentally, physically, and rightly so, because we haven't been there for so many years, and so many players haven't been in the Final Four, and Final Four is chaotic. You show up on Wednesday and there's cameras that you do this interview, that interview, all basketball is there, your agents, your family, so you have to be ready. And once you live this and you say, okay, now I know what it takes often on the court, then you're ready to go.
In terms of the decision-making process also, especially with I think a lot of the people who are also interested to hear it with Sharas, working with Sharas in the past years, how was the decision-making process during the season leading up to the Final Four? You guys qualified 5 years in a row, right? If I'm not mistaken, to the final.
2 years.
Sharas, Sharas qualified 5 years
with
in a
the
row.
Itoudis, we didn't qualify.
Yeah.
We lost it in the Game 5 against Olympiacos. Olympiacos won, I think it was in Kaunas, that Final Four. Then we qualified 2 years in a row, one by eliminating Monaco and last year by eliminating Paris.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the decisions are, there's nothing magic to it, it's just grinding. It's just knowing what you expect from your team. And I cannot speak from behalf of Saras, but what I saw, what I observed from my part is just handling day to day, having a plan on when we want the team to be ready. And there's a little bit of a myth behind it. How do you pick your team? Well, you can't really plan these things because we play every 2-3 days, so you need to win every game. So how do you pick? There's just some small time frames that you can really push, or you can play some people more, some people less, and then just try to have them physically ready for the Final Four. Paying very, very much attention on some red flag players, and that's now coming to the nitty-gritty of our profession, how you micromanage the team, and to see all this team ready to play. So, these guys are great, they're practicing, yeah, but each player is different. They get different minutes, they have different physiology, different age, different physical characteristics, and now you have to pinpoint who is on the verge of maybe getting hurt. The last thing you want to do is lose a player a month before the Final Four, and we can talk a little bit about that, my experience, how it affected us in the past. So just be able to really every day decide on what players should or should not be doing. And Saras was great about that, listening and understanding, because he was a player himself. He also got hurt as a coach by thinking, okay, no, we have to push, or, it's two ways. Either you rest people, and that's not always good, or you push because this is what we have to do, and that's maybe not good, right? So you have to keep the sweet spot of work versus rest.
Because if you rest the players too much, it's probably sometimes it's the right thing to do, but on your mind, consciously, it's a fear of not doing enough and resting the players too much and not having done the maximum amount of possible going to the Final Four, going into the big games. How much information did you relay? All information to the head coach always, or did you selectively just input something that's really specifically for the load that day?
Well, like with most head coaches that have 1,000 things on their minds, they don't have enough, a lot of time and focus to sit down with you and go through your beautiful charts and analysis of this and that. You got about 15 seconds. Usually the question is, what do you think we should be doing today? And everything's coded. I think we should have a hard day, maybe do this 2 8 minutes with this drill and that drill. That's it. Well, you think that's enough, or maybe you should do a little bit more. It's a short conversation there. Then point out the red flag guys, or the players that have, hey, watch this guy, he's been complaining, his back, whatever. I suggest we keep an eye. If he complains, he lets me know, I'll let you know, we got to pull him out. And Saras was great in paying attention to that and saying yes, because maybe some other coach say, no, either he practices or he doesn't practice. And now that's on the player, and most players want to practice, and they don't want to appear that they're sitting out, and there's a different cascade of things that might be happening. It's a decision tree. The player wants to practice, the player doesn't want to practice. The player is tough, the player is not tough. The player is going to hide these emotions and pain and go through it. The player is going to complain about everything. So you need to know the players. That's why it takes time. And I wanted to say that you have 15 seconds to talk to the coach, but in order to use these 50 seconds effectively, you need to work for hours with the staff, to communicate with the doctors, with whoever you need to communicate, the physios, have your data, do your analysis, so you have an opinion that can be boiled down to 3 sentences. So it's not like we show up and say, what do you think we should be doing today? Well, I think this and that. And that's the big benefit of using technology and data, because now it's not my opinion only, it's the opinion of the physios, the doctors, the other coaches, and the numbers. That we have to combine everything, because sometimes it's confusing. Well, the numbers said this, and who cares? This is just a small part of the equation. That's why we don't give reports to coaches, because they're meaningless. We ran this much, so.
Yeah, it's one puzzle piece.
Yeah, it's one piece of the puzzle, for sure.
It's on the assistant coaches to break down tactical things to coach and bring a filtered out opinion. I think from the performance staff, it's the same thing, to reap out all the information, because it's scattered everywhere. It's information overload constantly, and I think for especially for your position, it's important for the coach to give it in a quick, efficient way that's understandable for that day and make a decision quickly.
Yeah, and it has to be backed up, because when we are winning and when things are going well, everybody's happy and the conversation are short. But when we have issues, when we're in a losing streak, when there is a little bit of a difference of opinion between, let's say, the performance staff and the coach on what we should be doing physically always, And that's when you have to, have me as a professional and our team behind me, is that we have to be very well prepared to explain why we feel like we feel. So the coach, and that's how you start building trust. And that's, I think, the number one key, obviously, is for somebody to trust you, that when you tell him something is because of you have no personal agenda, which could be what? It could be, I want to cover my butt because we had a lot of injuries and I don't want any more injuries. So I'm going to pull out this player from practice because I really want to play it safe, but that's not good for the team. Okay, so now we go to the next step, is that injury prevention is about the whole organization. So we were discussing, because you mentioned mistakes, we made those mistakes earlier. We had this early warning systems, and we were all too smart back there in the performance and medical, and we knew this player was in danger because physically he had pain and the data, whatever, but we did nothing. So we went, okay, well, what do you think? Well, let's go through today's practice and see what happens. And what do you think will happen? And then, or you go to coach and you don't pressure so much, and no, let him practice, and I'll pull him out of practice. All right, coach, because it was a conflict period. We're losing, coach is under pressure. And then after we paid the price and made those mistakes, we said we have to sit down in the beginning of the season and decide what the organization is going to do if Wade Baldwin or Marco Guduric or whoever, we believe that they're on this line that they do need to not to practice today, okay? And the management needs to be in it because, hey, why is our player not practicing?
You decide on the rules before the season of how you want to go about it.
Yeah, just have a nice conversation. You don't have to set this up to have a conversation, but yeah, but you can. It's very official. But you sit there and you talk to the coach and say, hey, when we have these red flags, how do you think we should handle it? We think, and you always give the coach the first choice because that's his team, it's his responsibility. But when we believe that somebody's in danger, well, let's try to follow one path. So the management needs to know why the star player is not going to probably play in this game, and the coach needs to know why, because when we bring it up to that point that somebody needs to stay out, they really need to stay out. And the question is always, well, is that one day going to make a difference? And the answer is yes. It might make a difference, and you might keep the player playing. And these are very, very hard decisions because it's inevitable that your good players, your players you absolutely need, will have to stay out of action for some really important games. And who takes the responsibility for that? Okay, so
that's, with the load management during practices is one thing, but the load management throughout the season with the travel schedule, with the Euroleague schedule, plus the domestic league schedule, the practices have to be very efficient and have to be managed as well. And then, the game day, everything has to be according to what you present to the coach. The coach has a plan, but then how much do you implement your little impact, the details that you want to emphasize on avoiding injuries? How much goes into it day by day throughout the season? Because the EuroLeague schedule is, it's deemed almost for overload. So you just have to unload basically a lot of times.
Yeah, you cannot unload. And the management is obviously we have a kind of short-term vision. We next week where we're going to play, who we're going to play. Domestic league games sometimes are easier, so you can say, okay, well, we'll play this double week and maybe we can rest this guy or this player that might need rest. But I think General Patton said that all your plans fail once you hit the battle, or something like when
Mike Tyson, I think, said it.
Yeah, all your plans.
Everybody has a plan B until you get punched in the face.
Yeah, so you play a game and you have, after the end of the game, you have 2 injuries, and all your plans go down the toilet because that person that you wanted to rest need to play again and even more. So it's a short-term process, day by day. You never know who's going to call in the morning before practice because we have this rule: if you have pain, if you have it overnight, you have to call us. If you have pain in the morning, because we practice at around 12, so there's no time to really reach out to the players. But we want to know people's condition ideally as early as possible, so coach can know who he has in a practice. And that was a point of tension in the past, that we would show up 30 minutes before practice and we'd say, this guy cannot really practice. And I said, you're telling me 30 minutes before practice? And then we learned that lesson also, that you have to be proactive. But it's a really day-to-day management and seeing what condition your players are in, what you have in front of you, what happened in the past, and what's going to happen in the future. And a lot of coaches have a short window, so we have these conversations often. So we finish a game, coach takes the stat sheet at the end, and we're discussing what to do tomorrow. Probably it's going to be a day off, but the players that didn't play need to practice. And that's another complexity of the EuroLeague. You have 3-4 groups within the team at each given moment that need to do different things. So they see the stats, they say, oh, this guy played 11 minutes, so he's going to tape tomorrow. And then sometimes this is true, and they should, but sometimes we have to step in and tell him, listen, he played 11 this game, but he has been playing a lot the previous games, and because he's local, he's going to play a lot of minutes on Sunday, so maybe just, and he's 32, and he has been having a little bit of an issue, so why don't we just do an individual? And that's a conversation, again, opinions. A coach has very good, if I was lucky to work with coaches that really understood the game and had a great feel, so, but it's a conversation. There's a lot of things to be decided.
So that's interesting. Like, what are the key points on making that decision? Because you said age is also a factor, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
So do you have like a checkpoint list, or is it varies from player to player, obviously, because one guy's 25-year-old is not the same as a 34-year-old. But is there a checklist you go through, the playing time of the game day, the age of the player, the practices he went through that month?
Yeah.
What's the progression?
Yeah, and that's probably one of the key uses of our technology. We use Kinexon, but there's a lot of things out there to use. But with their help, we can see how the whole week went. So if you played 11 minutes in that game, and we see that you practice really well, either individual or you had a lot of participation in our practices, and you are, to our standards, let's say, trained enough to simplify the words and not use fancy technical terms, like you're good with your training, then today can be a lighter day. And yes, so what you did before is very important for us, right? We're going to get your data and we're going to look at what you did. But if you don't have data, you can use common sense and you can see what the player did the last weeks, what's going to happen in the next couple of days, and then how do you feel today? That's a very, very powerful question that can replace a lot of thousands of euros or dollars of technologies. How do you feel? Everything good? I'm a little bit tired. More than normal? Like, yeah, I'm a little sore, like sore after a game, or just, is it only one side, or is it both legs? If it's both legs, it's not a big problem. But if it's localized, yeah, my hamstring is super sore. Yeah, well, that's a note. Mm-hmm. Age, how old is that player? Injury history, one of the biggest determinants of future injuries if you were injured in the past. If you have a player that is get injured every year in their calf, chances are that whoever you hire as a strength coach or whatever, they're probably going to get injured. Maybe less days out, or maybe they're not going to get injured at all, but you have to expect that there is a red flag right there. So all these things get into the equation, and then you make a decision. So, but I don't want people to think that we have some algorithm just going into the computers. It's just having the data, working with the players, and you can sometimes tell by looking if somebody needs rest, or if somebody comes in the weight room, because our weight room is, you just step into the weight room and everything is there, physios, whatever. So the first thing they see is my face, which is not always good. But sometimes they come in there, they just get on the bench and just sit down. The body language says, I don't want to be here, I can't move. So I don't need my data, I know. Yeah. And then that's when I want to tell my coach, hey, this guy doesn't look really good.
Like instincts.
Yeah, you just observe, and then you ask, how do you feel? Oh, man, my knees are killing me today. And what do I need all this fancy technology? He just told me how things are.
Mm-hmm. It's, sorry, I was a little bit somewhere else, but
that's common.
Yeah, I just, in terms of peak time for injuries, there's the load that you see what the player is going through, the emotions that he's going through. I'm a walking red flag myself. I was thinking I'm a walking injury anytime, any day I wake up, I don't know what injury I'm going to get next. But in regards to players, during the season, there's a little bit of a peak sometimes, or is there?
Well, that's a great question that we can be talking hours about that. And so there's a science called epidemiology. We all know that. And that's something that we should start taking more seriously in basketball. I know the Euroleague now is starting to implement a surveillance system for the whole league. So everybody's supposed to register their own injuries, and then the league takes the collective stats. We've been doing it for 5-6 years, doing our own analysis, because if you want to talk about injury prevention, you have to know what you want to prevent. Well, what is the biggest problem? If you ask the doctor, let's say, or the physio, or the strength coach, and they should all know, by the way, the information should be shared. What is the top 2 injuries that we faced the last 3 years? What are we trying to prevent at the end of the day? And if you don't know, then you're just shooting in the air, trying to kill, some flying birds. That you have to have a system. You have to have a knowledge of what you're trying to prevent. For example, for us, it was knee, ankle, and calves. So the last 3 years, And we have numbers, and I'm going to get down to what you're asking. And in every team is different, I think, because a lot of things are not the same. The schedule is not the same. The competition level is not the same. Very important factor. Practice pattern is not the same. It's different practice of Yannis Feropoulos and Dimitris Itoudis or Ataman, whoever. They have different ways of doing things, different ways of resting people, different mix of individuals. So you cannot say, what did you do in Fener and it worked and so it's going to work in Žalgiris? No, it's a completely different environment. And you have to figure it out. You have to do your own analysis. So you have to have the tools and the knowledge. For us, it was always a peak right at the end of, from November to December. And then there was a small peak in March. This year, we recorded our last injury on the 19th of December. And the next injury was recorded, it was a mild injury at the end of March. And that's rare. We're super lucky. I'm not claiming any part in it, like, okay, it was by design. Of course, we did our work. I'm not underplaying that either, but no injuries there. In December, we barely had players to play. We were terrible. We were losing games. We looked bad. And then we had a peak over there in March. Why? That's a great question now. Now you have to sit down and take your data that you should have and analyze. My guess is that players, and that's a guess, and it needs to be studied. And fortunately now with technologies, we have the ability to do our own studies in the teams if you have the right personnel, is that players come from the summer, and we start with the preseason, which is very intense in the Euroleague environment. That's our environment. That it doesn't mean that it's somebody else's environment. And then we load them. Of course, they have to practice, and they cope. Most of them. If you want, I'll make a comment on that too. And then by the time the games start, and there's mainly practice, and then which is one intensity, and then you go to the intensity of the games in October, and that's another level of intensity. And then injuries start happening. So the athletes are just not coping good enough with the load. Also, games are, I think the number for us was like 70% more possible to get injured during a game than a practice. We rarely get hurt in practice, but we do get hurt in games. And I think this is a pattern in all sports, if you look at the epidemiological data. So brings us back to the summer, which is not the off-season anymore, it's the early preseason. What you do in the summer will reflect what's happening in your season, okay? Another thing that we observe, and I think is an interesting statistic, is when you look at the injuries and you break down the injuries, there's different systems. The one that is more common breaks down to 3 categories in terms of severity. Severity is like how bad, how many days out. That's number one question, how many days is this guy gonna go out, stay out? So 1 to 7 is considered to be a mild injury. You're out for 3-4 days. Nothing bad will happen. You keep your physiological adaptations and all that. Then it goes from 8 to 28, which is a huge jump, in my opinion. It's 3. So 1 week is mild, 3 weeks is moderate. And then after 28 days, the injury is classified as a severe injury. So these are the injuries that will keep you from a month and to maybe the whole season. Last 3 years in our stats, we had 11 severe injuries. We had 1 ACL. We had multiple things happening. 8 out of 11 severe injuries happen until the middle of October, okay? That's several games played, not too many. I can, like, maybe 10, 12. How many games do you play?
National team players in that category also?
All mixed.
All mixed.
All the population of active players. 8 out of 11, if I'm not mistaken, our stats, which means what? Because it's our players and it's not the league players, which you don't know, nobody knows the names, and you should not know the names. It should be classified. But in our case, we'll sit down and say, who got hurt? Where did he get hurt? And why the hell did it happen? 9 out of 10 times you have bad luck. Mm-hmm. Somebody falls and breaks his hand. Okay, you can't really do anything about it. Also, this is also a little bit debatable, but is what they did or did not do in the summer. Most of them did not do enough. So you show up in the training camp, and everybody is asking about assessments. What do you do in the beginning of the season? We don't do much, but now I can look at you. If you're 3% or 2% overweight, let's say, take that back. If you're 2-3% more in body fat, increased body fat, I know you didn't do much. You didn't do much. There's no way you be fit and work hard and you're fat. There's absolutely no way. So I don't need to test much. So I know that I have to keep an eye on you. Now the coach and the management just paid a whole lot of money to get you. So, and you know that, and you feel that you got it. So you get into the practice and you practice hard because you want to show that I'm good. And the next day you're sore, and then something happens, which is a muscle tear, which is something that's 28 days plus. What happens after that? You come in, let's throw out some arbitrary numbers, at 60%, because you had a nice summer. You lifted a little bit of weights, you ran a little bit, but you went to this party, you went to this wedding, you show up. You train a little bit, you go to 75%, let's theoretically. And then you get hurt. Where do you go back to? 50%. Because now not only you're not untrained, but you're also hurt. And now it's end of October. And you decide and we all say, okay, this player is clear. Let's start practicing. So he starts practicing, but now it's November. And there's no practice in Euroleague, so how are you going to get back in shape? And the teams start finding their way, and where are you going to play?
Unless you're behind the 8 ball. You're behind the 8 ball.
And I've seen careers, I don't want to say the names, being ruined or severely being set back because of the summer. So, this cascade of observation, trying to see what's happening, and now our thing is we got to take care of our guys in the summer and sign players that are healthy, if that's possible. And if they're not, at least to know what to expect. And say, oh my God, this guy has a calf tear. Well, he's been having calf tears all his life. Yeah. What do you expect?
Can you touch on Achilles injuries? Because now there's an uproar, obviously, also in our club. But in general, what's your opinion with Achilles injuries? The cause of it is it related to the shoes? Is it related to the calf injuries that maybe it may have occurred in the past? Is it related to the load? Too much, not enough? What's your opinion?
Well, if I knew.
Yeah,
nobody really knows, and thank God I had only one in my career big event, or just very few. But it's been happening more in professional basketball, and that's another thing. Going back to statistics, just because there's some high-profile events doesn't mean that it's necessarily increased this injury. We just saw some famous people getting it, and you think it's everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's called availability bias. Mm-hmm. But there is evidence, and there's a great study done by Adam Petway out of Louisville, that he looked into Achilles tendon statistics and mechanism, how it happens. And it seems to be, I don't know, so first of all, there is 70% of all Achilles injuries are happening with the same mechanism, which is this fake step back. If I can show, you have a bent ankle, dorsiflexion on the ankle, bent knee, torso is forward, and then is this false step that you're faking and trying to move, but your foot is back, the ankle is bent, is dorsiflexed, and you're trying to push, and instead of pushing, there's first a downward movement of the Achilles. So you're trying to push, and it's flexed, and then it extends, and the theory is that the stretch is too much, and the load is too much over there, the stretching load, and the Achilles breaks. The Achilles is the strongest tendon in the body. It's very hard to break. And it's also, in most cases, there's a little bit of external rotation, so you're not here, you're a little bit here, and you try to move, boom, and it snaps, right? You're not going anywhere. There's no movement, so it's the downward part that fails. And that's the mechanism. And load has been blamed, the long-term load, because my guess was always that the tendon should be able to handle this load, but maybe there's micro damage over the years and it just snapped. It's just this moment that the forces went to these weakened tissues. That's one theory. Muscle activation, if the calf is injured, is not, because every time, that's another point that is more technical. Every time you have a joint, let's say, or a body part, let's focus on the joint, that is painful, swollen, even a little bit, the muscles around tend to lose their normal activation, okay? In severe cases like ACL, they lose all activation. That's why you see after the ACL operation, somebody walks out of the surgery room, they have no quads. But why did that happen? The right quad, let's say, is almost intact. The left is non-existent, but they both didn't work for the same amount of time. It's neural. Okay, so after an injury, after an ankle sprain, you must know for sure that your lower leg muscles are not functioning correctly. You know that. We should know that as practitioners. And also, although you see you can run, well, wait. Appearances can be deceiving, but so if you have pain in the calf, maybe there's disrupted nervous system function, to talk simply, and maybe more loads are going to the Achilles. Micro damage has been blamed, load has been blamed, shoes not so much, but the research is inconclusive. Mm-hmm. So not quite sure. From our side, what you can do, before, you can increase what we call the stiffness of the tendons, try to increase it with exercise, with isometrics, plyometrics, just make the tissue, do certain exercises that target that particular tissue and make it more resilient, let's say, which is, what we all trying to do. So
there's an injury, okay? Let's get to my favorite subject, communication. The chain of commands. The chain of commands within the team and the staff, especially after an injury occurs. Because now the teams are getting bigger, the staffs are getting bigger, the communication pattern it can be a little bit complicated in terms of who to talk to first, what's the progression. You have a physiotherapist, you have the doctor, you have the head coach, the assistant coach, the trainers around the players. The player gets injured. What's the progression? Yeah. What's the pattern, chain of commands?
Well, nothing can disrupt the team function besides losing and these types of events, then injuries and some more serious injuries of important players, or even sometimes, players that are not deemed to be, then A players of the team. And globally, in more sports, this is a problem. What you just mentioned, because there's different departments in a team. Is the medical department. For example, in CSKA, we had 3 doctors, right? In Fener, we had 1. But then you got the physios, you got the nutritionists, and you got the strength coach. It's a big group. So if there's no system in how you handle things, it's going to be chaos. And the reason is because everybody has learned to act individually. I'm the doctor. I'm going to do the doctor things. So I'm going to take the player, take them to the MRI. And then immediately the owner may text, say, when is our guy getting back? And then I'm compelled to answer. And I say, okay, well, it looks like not so bad. It's 3 weeks. Then this goes conveyed to the coach, but the coach already talked to the strength coach because they're in the office. They say, what do you think, man? Well, I think a week, it doesn't look that bad. Well, the doctor that you never spoke to has a different opinion. The physio, now the team manager or somebody that's been in the team for many years talks to the physio that's been in the teams for many years, and they feel like they're closer. So I say, what do you think, man? Well, maybe a month. Okay. So over here, there's a lot of things happening, you can understand. Even the fact that the question, when do you think he's coming back? What does that mean? For the fans and the president is, when can we see that great player with a jersey playing again? For me, as a strength coach, is when can these players start practicing before we discuss about games and so on and so forth. There's a lot of problems. So what's the solution? The solution is to build coherent staffs and not put in these medical staffs / performance staffs, because it's one thing. People that are, hey, we're just going to hire a physio. Okay, are you physio? Yes, okay, let's go in. I heard he's really good. Okay, work. Strength coach. Yeah, he's coming from whatever country. He's the best in Europe because we're all the best. And then you aggregate people that don't know each other. We never talked about the philosophies, and we don't speak the same professional language. And if that happens, in some miracle, we manage to work together. Different agendas. My agenda is to stay here forever. It's a great club. I get paid. I can do my stuff outside. Winning or losing, you know how many coaches I've seen pass by. My goal is to win Euroleagues, let's say. I'm not going to say me, it's like metaphorically. So I'm going to do the best I can for the team. The coach just wants the players, doesn't care about what's happening over there. So there's different agendas within the team. And so you have to be very careful in the hiring process, how you collect these individuals. It's no different like a basketball team. You don't just collect good players and just let them play. You need the scorer, the rebounder, the screener, and the good defender and all that. And then something that's very hard to get across to in European basketball, and that's been a norm in all other sports, is you need to manage this team. All right? So in most teams, it's not exactly clear who is responsible for that structure of the medical performance. In all the other sports, NFL, NBA, they put the director of performance, they have the power to hire and fire, and they're accountable. If something doesn't work, you're fired first. So somehow in basketball, the doctor has some magical aura around that they should be running things, but the doctors know nothing about therapy, healing people, and training. So it's missed over there, right? So you need some structure that is clear hierarchy. So when an injury happens, no one talks to anybody. For example, that's just a piece of it. Before we all talk, and all is like the head strength coach, the head physio, and the doctor. We all need to sit down. Hey, Mr. President, give me 10 minutes. I'll get back to you, right? So we all discuss, hey, man, if after you finish, so me as a strength coach, I say the guy's going to stay out for 3 weeks. He has a grade 2 muscle tear. But after those 20 days, I need another 10 days to bring him back to practice. Okay, so 20 plus 10? Yes. How many days do you think you should be doing therapy, blah, blah, blah? We sit down and say, okay, the total absence time is plus or minus, 25 days. And then whoever is asked says the same thing. And we instruct everybody, if somebody talks to you about something else that is not your, let's say, area, refer them to the head coach, to the director of performance, to the doctor, to whoever. We have and the same goes to the player. The player listens, the player's asking a million questions. The agent is not going to start calling. We need to be solid. And we need to present, sorry to interrupt, a plan of action that is going to be very specific. And it has to be a plan. Doesn't mean it won't change, it will change. It has to be recorded, written, and shared with all staff. There's plenty of, you have over there a pamphlet of XPS. That's a management system. We use athlete monitoring. Write it down. Everybody has access. Everybody's on the loop.
On the same page.
Exactly.
So you mentioned the 3 roles that have to get talked first before it gets. Can you repeat the 3?
Well, I think the doctor is going to make an initial diagnosis, right? And then he was announced to. You know how many times we start doing rehabs without knowing exactly what happened? It's weird. What happened? Well, it's just a muscle tear, just a hamstring. Okay, which head? What type of is the tendon like affected? Yeah, I need all this information. The physio needs all this information. So the doctor needs to really sit down and say, listen, we got this. These are the details. I see this that I don't like. There's a bone sprain, that ankle sprain also. We have to be really careful with this, blah, blah, blah. So the physio just making a plan. Okay, well, that looks like a 20-day thing. And the strength coach says, whatever. So those 3 people need to talk. And then usually the head of performance just gives the whole overview to the coach. Coach, 1, 2, 3. Oh, and then if the coach starts asking medical questions, well, let me get the doc.
Yeah.
I'm not going to explain to you what the ACL looks like. I don't know. If you want to know about weight training, for example, I'll tell you. But and what about this PRP therapy thing? Okay, well, let's get the physio. What you guys think? I have an opinion, but he's better. So he's his job. But the initial contact, hey, this is what the injury is. This is what we think will happen. This is what we're going to do. So the coach is now, okay, with these guys, I kind of trust them. I mean, they look like they're on top of this.
It's a lot of questions. I won't get through every question, but I highlighted some if we had 6 minutes. In Euroleague, we have the ELPA rules that doesn't allow the teams to practice with the players for more than 35 days from the first official game. What's your opinion about this rule, considering the injuries that you had in October?
Well, as a member of the ESCCA, the Strength and Conditioning Coach Association, I was part of these conversations, and it was just an arbitrary number. It kind of looks right, because before it was uncontrolled, and the players had some right. I cannot bring you 10 weeks before the league. That's a tough one. You cannot change these 35 days, because we're looking at one end of the equation is when do we start? Well, the other end is when do we finish? We just finished on the 26th, and if we're going to this game 7, it'll be 1st of July until anybody went home. Well, it makes sense that you can't come back on the 20th of August. So there has to be a conversation, in my opinion, my humble opinion, that everything needs to end by arbitrary June 10, June 15. Nothing happens after that. National teams is a different story. We can discuss this if you want, but you cannot have these players play basketball for 340 days and then expect that they're going to stay healthy and they perform good and they have good attitudes and they're not fed up and they're not burned out. So 35 days is not enough. We prefer a little bit more. But if we put more days, if we bring them earlier, we have to let them go sooner.
I'm going like ATOs here, because there's a lot of chronic soft tissues injuries versus alcohol, lifestyle. Do you see direct correlation between?
Definitely, there's a correlation between lifestyle and any type of injury from nutrition. Alcohol is toxic. Dehydration and a lot of other stuff are happening. So, we're not talking about a glass a week, but we're talking about drinking. And there are a lot of players that do drink. Lifestyle, sleeping, standing, taking care of your body, being off your feet. We're talking about the 24-hour athlete. You're not an athlete for 3 hours. Stress is highly correlated with injuries. Stress is controlled by the player, but also by the coaching staff. And we have observed that there's higher rate of injuries when the team is pressed. Something changes in the psychology and the way we practice. So all these things are very important. It's a non-linear thing.
Do you have any data on how the frequency of injuries or missed games has changed over the last 5 or 10 years?
No, because in Euroleague, no, because we don't have a unified surveillance systems. And now we start doing it, but it's far from being optimal because doctors and whoever is, not to speak bad about the doctors, people think I'm like, the doctor.
We have a doctor here. That's,
the doctor here. So, no, but the people
He's
that
going to talk to you afterwards.
Yeah, the thing is that whoever is must record the injuries, that they're not trained. And we went all this for this topic in the EuroLeague, that you have to train, when is it an injury? When do we record, when do we put somebody on the injury list, and when do we take them off the injury list? It's not clear. So the stats are, in January, there were some teams that had 5 injuries. I mean, it's not true. So we don't have that data, unfortunately.
What physical preparation should a young player, teenager player prioritize before stepping into the pro, semi-pros to minimize the risk of overuse injuries like stress reactions, tendinopathies, or muscle strain?
That's a big issue. Kids nowadays are training like pros, and that's wrong. They specialize from a young age, and what's missing is rationality in the time that the players are practicing. They're practicing in the afternoon, morning. They go to the strength coach. They do jumps. They do whatever, and there's not enough rest. Somehow, in some cultures, rest is not deemed important. And another thing that I saw is that when young players complaining of pain, they just come on, you're young. Me, your age, I was doing blah blah blah. So they're not treated like humans sometimes, and that was a big fight in many of my clubs. Because I'm not going to say the doctors, but yeah, the young guys, even the coach, come on, he's 17, yeah, but he's hurting, and if you don't fix it now, I'm after that unemployed after that. Yeah, come to the
one after another. It's shrinking.
Let's wrap it up.
It's shrinking. What role does player education play in your line of work?
Huge. Motivation through education. You want to motivate somebody? Explain why they're doing it. That's not my quote. It was Mark Verstegen, one of the best strength coaches ever. Said he spent, and I adopted that from him. It's stolen 100%. That before I start with any player doing anything, we go through theory. dumbed down to the level of somebody that's not interested in learning a lot of anatomy, but how we sprint, how we push, how we land, how we take off. We go through the theory. So when we do drills, it makes sense. And once it makes sense, it's executed. So the younger the kids start doing our line of work, I call it strength and conditioning, the better it is. I say that 10, 11 years old, great. People are confused. Are they going to lift weights? No, they're going to maybe a little bit. Doesn't hurt. But if it's done right, but we're going to teach them how to move. And then the coach says, oh, this guy cannot hedge. How can this guy hedge if he cannot lower his body or her body? So, yeah, education, huge.
Yeah, to get back on the question prior, I think the big problem of overuse and over training and losing motivation, and there's not a culture of rest is in China. And in China, there's a lot of players that go through a system of practicing too long for every day, and there's this not nationally accepted to rest the players, and then they mentally more exhausted than physically a lot of times.
It's disastrous.
So the last question, a quick one, is directed towards both of us. Benas, how do you find somebody that talks more than you? So
A story of my life.
It's both of us, I guess both of us.
Now I lost the doctors, I lost the coaches, now I lost my friends.
Everybody, KOSTAS CHATZICHRISTOS right here.